welcome back to the Conspiracy Couple podcast. I'm Marisa.
And I'm Ethan.
And today we have another very interesting topic to dive into with you guys. But before we get started, I'm going to toss it over to Ethan.
Yes, you should follow us on all our social media. We are on Instagram at Conspiracy Couple, TikTok at Conspiracy Couple Podcast, and YouTube at Conspiracy Couple Podcast if you are not already watching. But if you are, go ahead and like the video, leave a comment letting us know what you think, and turn on post notifications and subscribe if you are not already.
Thank you, Ethan. Yes, a note on TikTok, I just posted a really cute video of Domino.
Yes.
So if you like to see cute videos of Domino and potentially Bean, then you should follow us on TikTok. Also, just very quickly, I know that last week we had said that there was an episode of Paranoid Radio's podcast where we went on and discussed the Salem witch trials, but I didn't know what day that was coming out. But by the time this episode is uploaded, it will be out. And so I will provide the links in the description for the video.
Of this podcast?
Yes, of this episode.
Okay.
So yeah, it was really interesting. We talked about the Salem witch trials, and
just go check it out.
Yeah, go check it out. It was really fun.
Yeah, if you like it, check them out a little bit more.
Yeah.
Spread the love.
Spread the love. So anything else before I dive right in?
Nope.
Okay, so we're going to dive in. So this week on the podcast, we are going to be discussing Plum Island. Ethan, as always, have you heard anything about Plum Island before?
Well, I assume it is an island where you can find plums.
That was half right. I'll give you 50% for...
Is it an island?
It's an island, yes.
So is that the half I got right?
The half you got right is the island part, yes. I wouldn't just...
No, I have not heard about Plum Island at all.
Yeah, okay, well that's good. I wouldn't bring a conspiracy... Oh, I wouldn't bring a topic about an island with plums. Unless it was like...
Well, I assumed that there was more to the island. I just thought plums
I don't
were
think there are
involved.
any plums on the island, unfortunately.
All right, then I'm interested to find out what the plum is about.
Yeah. So, we're starting from scratch. But, Ethan, you should have a little bit of a memory of it. Because...
Was I there?
No.
Oh, we said I should have a memory of it.
We went on vacation to Plum Island. No. We very briefly mentioned Plum Island in our Montauk project episode. Okay, you don't remember that.
Not a clue.
So that was about 2 years ago.
I mean, I remember the Montauk project episode. I just don't...
I'm sorry.
I remember the Montauk project episode. I just don't remember anything about Plum Island.
Yeah. It was a very brief, portion of the episode, but it is interesting. It does kind of tie into the Montauk project a little bit. So if you guys want a refresher, you should go back and listen to that episode. It's one of our very first ones, so you'll have to scroll kind of far on the podcast platform.
And it's not on YouTube.
And it's not on YouTube.
So you'll have to go to those things.
Streaming platform of choice.
Yeah.
But
not YouTube. Not that streaming
YouTube.
platform.
Not that one. You can't choose that one.
Streaming platform of choice, but not
But
full
if this
choice,
one is your choice, then you can't choose this
then
one.
you have to go and listen to it.
Yeah. So today we are going to be dedicating the whole episode to Plum Island and to some of the theories and questions about what might be going on there. So we're going to start off by, doing some history and background and talking about what is Plum Island officially. So officially, Plum Island is an 840-acre island, and it's about 1.5 miles off the coast of Long Island, New York. And it is a top-secret animal disease research center. So the island itself has been in use by the U.S. government for centuries, with it first being used from the 1800s all the way through to World War I as a military base. And this is because it has a very strategic location to protect against any enemy ships. And apparently, even the very first president of the United States, George Washington, while he was still a general, stated that he believed the island was a very strategically important place for U.S. military security.
Nova, you probably heard some rumblings or something.
A horse, running through the apartment.
Nova has some of the most intense zoomies I've ever seen.
Yeah.
She is booking it back and forth right now. So
yeah, she's running really fast.
If you hear something, that is what's going on. There is not a horse stampede outside. It
No,
is
it
just
is a
our little
7-pound
baby cat.
cat.
Yeah.
There she goes.
Jumping up on the table.
Yeah, she like dragged the grocery list off the table. It was so funny.
Anyway, we will ignore her
Anyways,
going forward.
she's so
but
cute, it's so hard.
Gotta address it when it happens.
Yeah. So this island has a lot of history in America, in regards to like the military and strategically. And during World War II, the island was going to be used as a different research facility by the U.S. Army Chemical Corps. However, the project was never finished, and it was taken over in 1954 by the U.S. Department of Agriculture, which is the USDA. So the center states that its purpose is to research animal-based diseases that could potentially have some serious consequences for humans in respect to food supply and the environment. So in other words, to protect America's livestock from any diseases that may harm them or our food supply. And so it's not just, it's primarily for American livestock, but it doesn't just research diseases that affect American animals. They also receive samples from different diseases and different animals from all around the world with the purpose of helping these other countries. And they also, if there's an outbreak of a certain disease, then there is, research that happens. And there is a vaccine bank in the facility that can be sent out to other countries and to be used as needed. So currently there are about 400 people who work at the facility. And as I said, it was taken over in the 50s by the USDA, and it has worked to prevent the spread of diseases such as foot and mouth disease and African swine fever. So
I thought for the longest time, foot and mouth disease was foot in mouth disease. And I was very confused.
Yeah, so I was confused as well because I was thinking hand, foot, and mouth disease.
Is there a difference?
Yeah, so foot and mouth disease is specifically to livestock.
Because they don't have hands.
Right. So, because I was thinking hand, foot, and mouth disease, like.
That's what I thought. I was thinking hand, like
that's
foot,
not
and mouth disease.
That's not that rare. Like when I worked at the clinic, I saw that probably like once a year.
Okay.
So
hand, foot, and mouth disease is like the most generic. I feel like name of something you could come.
I feel like it's like very to the point.
I mean,
like I kind of like the name.
Gonna be honest, I still don't really know what it is. But that's not the point. Let's just keep going.
Yeah. I kind of like the name because it's not like one of those confusing like Latin names. It's just like hand, foot, and mouth.
Well, I mean, then there's like a cold. You catch a cold. That's pretty straight to the point.
Yeah. The cold. The flu.
Yeah.
Anyways.
Well, the flu. Yeah.
So, foot and mouth disease. The last outbreak of foot and mouth disease in America was in 1929. But there has been outbreaks all over the world since then. So veterinarians say that this disease is so deadly, and so, I guess deadly is not the right word, but so like serious, that an animal will be infected for 3 years after catching the disease. So after they get the disease, they're still going to continue to have that disease and be positive for it for 3 years, and that it will spread, and therefore any of the meat that the animal might produce you can't use it.
Okay.
And any animal who becomes infected has to be killed because it spreads so fast and it can have such a huge detrimental effect on livestock. And so essentially every outbreak is like insane. And it could potentially have a big, big impact on the food supply. So the USDA was operating the facility from the 50s until 2003. When the facility was taken over by the Department of Homeland Security. And this is apparently because the facility poses a huge risk for bioterrorism, and they decided to transfer it over to Homeland Security following the 9/11 attacks. Which, if you think about it, it makes sense.
I guess.
It makes sense. But when you think of the Department of Homeland Security,
right, it
kind of makes you think, well, it would fit better with USDA.
Right.
So why is Homeland Security in charge of it? But then when you think of like, okay, well, if you want to attack a country or attack a place, there are diseases there that could have like a huge impact on their food supply.
Isn't like that kind of a thing against like the Geneva Convention and stuff though?
Yes, it is. And we're actually going to talk about that. I'm surprised you knew that.
You surprised I know what the Geneva Convention is?
I was like, oh, okay. Like when I was doing my research. Anyways.
What?
Anyways.
What does that mean?
I was like,
You
oh,
don't
that's
expect me to
interesting.
know things.
No. I don't expect you to know
I
those
know
kinds of
some
things.
things.
When you said Geneva Convention, I was like, wow, okay.
I'm around.
You're around. Yeah, okay.
Yeah.
Okay, so that's the official, what happens here. That's the official description. Unofficially, people question what it is that actually goes on there and whether the scientists there are engaging in some sketchy experimentation.
So my guess is that the theories surround them creating like bioweapons and like diseases, like weaponizing diseases and stuff like that. Is that what people think?
Yes, that's
Especially
one of the
because
things.
of the like Homeland Security being in charge.
Yeah, that's one of the things. So somebody in a video that I watched actually called it the Area 51 of bioweapons, which I thought was pretty interesting.
I feel like just Area 50, like what does that even mean?
Secret government. How did she just knock over?
I don't know.
Secret government facility. That is sketchy. That's what Area 51 means, I guess. But I thought that was interesting. So Plum Island is. She's already over there.
I thought I saw her. I thought she like stopped and
No. Plum Island is very secretive, and scientists who work at the facility are apparently flown in and flown out. And a lot of the scientists who work there are actually foreign scientists who come in and work there.
Interesting.
The inside of the facility is pretty insane. So all of the air inside of the facility is negatively pressurized, which basically keeps any air from leaving the facility and going outside.
What is like how do you negatively pressurize?
Like a room.
Yeah.
So you can do like...
Because that's different than like airplanes.
Yes. So, well, no. So basically air comes into the building, but it will never go out of the building.
Yeah. So how?
I don't know how it happens, but it's possible. Like,
And
you can have different pressurized...
Because
like,
airplanes
facilities.
are pressurized. They're not negatively pressurized.
Right, because you couldn't have air coming out of the sky.
Right, because airplanes go up where there's less pressure, so to remain like
Because
keep normal
if you
pressure,
were
they
in the
pressurize
atmosphere at
the
that level, you wouldn't
airplane.
be able to breathe.
So they negative pressure.
So air is coming in, but it will not come out.
That doesn't make sense to me.
I think you're thinking too much about this. So this is not the most important
It
part.
sounds interesting, and so I was just trying to see if I could figure it out, but I cannot.
Okay.
It is too much for my brain.
That's okay. It's okay. We all have our limitations.
Yeah, I should have just quit at Geneva.
Geneva Convention.
Geneva Convention.
Yeah.
Sorry,
I'm
Geneva. I'm done.
Convention. So, when the scientists come into the facility, they have to change clothes into clothes that are issued there. And before they leave, they have to do this big disinfecting shower routine, which makes sense.
I was gonna say, if they're working with like diseases and stuff like that, that does make sense why you would want to like prevent any of those things from leaving, especially if you're flying them in from different places in the world.
Right. And the island is also patrolled by security guards at all times, and you aren't allowed to go on the island or near the island, which is interesting because it's a mile away from Long Island.
Right.
Which is a very populated area. But, however, I watched a video that was talking about, well, what happens at this facility? And the video was very obviously sponsored by the Department of Homeland Security.
So you can't really trust anything.
And so they brought on this representative from Homeland Security, and he says, none of our work is classified. Any research or work that we do is published and anyone can see it. And the same guy said that the reason that the facility was put on an island is because they were working with live viruses and they want to make sure it can't spread to animals on the mainland.
Right, like an outbreak. If there's something happens on the island, there's an outbreak, it's self-contained already. That makes sense.
Right, that's the idea.
Yeah.
That's the idea, so keep that in mind.
Okay.
So the history of Plum Island is, we talked about it a little bit, about how it's kind of always been used by the government for the military or for, whatever purpose. According to theorists, the history of Plum Island is actually pretty nefarious. So to get into the history, we have to go back in time surrounding, the time surrounding World War II. And we are going to be talking about a man named Eric Traub. And Erich Traub was a Nazi scientist and explorer. So he was one of the most well-known and high-up scientists in the Nazi Party. And the Nazis were known for experimenting in biological warfare as well as on human subjects.
Yeah. Nazis were known for a lot of bad things.
Correct. Specifically, one of the diseases that they worked on apparently was on foot and mouth disease as a method of biological warfare.
Interesting.
So some of the research that he did, Traub, would be on infectious diseases that he would inject into ticks, who would then transmit the infection through bites. Again, keep that in mind.
Okay.
So after the war ended, Russia and America gave pardons to some of these scientists for their war crimes in exchange for their service and work for the American and Russian governments. So Erich Traub was one of those scientists who was recruited under this program, which was called Operation Paperclip. So when Erich Traub was working in the Nazi Party, he worked directly under Hitler's second in command, creating diseases that could be sprayed and transmitted as a form of biological warfare. So this is something that I've never really understood, was the idea of, okay, this person's a really talented scientist, and we could use them to help us. So we're going to give them a pardon for their war crimes so they can help us. But the thing is, they were arrested for war crimes, first of all, but they were also part of an army that was directly working against you. So why would you think that it was a good idea? Like, I understand that they're a top-notch scientist, apparently, but wouldn't you be concerned? I would be concerned that if I'm, like, recruiting people to come work on these, like, highly dangerous and classified things, that I wouldn't want to pick someone who had been, like, months prior one of my enemies and who was trying to kill me and wipe out my people.
Yeah.
Like, it doesn't seem like the best recruitment practice. Like, who's to say that they wouldn't use these things against you?
Well,
that they aren't still loyal to their party and their country.
They don't have the resources or the ability to do that.
But they give them the resources. Here, have this lab.
Right, but it's not like they're just, like, free to do whatever they want. Like, they're watched. They're, like... It's like a prison of its own, but you still get to do work. I don't know.
It doesn't make sense to me. I mean, it's like, imagine hiring someone for a job, and before they applied for your company, they worked at a company that not only was your rival, but they also were actively trying to kill you. You're like, oh, you'd be the perfect candidate.
I like how that was about to be an analogy, and then it was just the exact.
And then I'm like, but then they tried to kill you.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's tricky, but if somebody is like that smart and knows that much and you really want to get the leg up in that area, I can see why you might be willing to make that sacrifice. But that being said, like, neither one of us obviously have any sort of experience dealing with anything of that high of stakes. So
right, it just doesn't seem... Anyways.
It's complicated,
yeah.
I'm sure.
So, Traub was one of these people who was recruited to work for the government. So in 1954, when the Plum Island Animal Disease Research Center was founded, Traub was given the job as one of the top researchers for the center.
Traub got the job.
So, in 1978, we're going to kind of jump ahead. In 1978, a disease outbreak occurred. And this was in the animals that were near the center. So, officials promptly took care of it by killing all of the infected animals.
So you said it was near the center. So was it on Plum Island?
It was on the island.
Okay.
Yes. All of the documentation surrounding this incident was classified. And interestingly enough, one of the workers at the facility, this was in that same promotional video I watched, stated that the center was highly safe. And they even said that it was an 11 on a scale of 1 to 10 for safety. And that nobody working at the facility had ever contracted foot and mouth disease. However, we're going to talk about this a little bit later, a disease outbreak occurred in animals that were being researched at the facility. At the time, they kept the animals in a pen outside. And it was an open air pen. And so animals could, like a bird could fly in, could get infected, and then go give the infection to another animal on the mainland. And so I don't know if necessarily that would be an 11 out of 10. in regards to safety when you have animals out in the open. Of course, after this incident, they changed the policies so that the animals were inside. But you can't say that it's an 11 out of 10 for safety when you have an outbreak and then kill all the animals.
When was this video made?
This was made the last couple of years.
So it's an 11 out of 10 now.
Currently, it's an 11 out of 10.
Yeah, you never said it was always an 11 out of 10.
Right. So that's some of the history. So if you did just go back and listen to our Montauk Project episode, we discussed the Montauk monster that washed up on a beach in East Hampton, New York in 2008. So if you don't remember, Ethan, you could probably put a picture on the screen. It's very creepy looking. So if you don't like looking at creepy looking animals, close your eyes for a second.
It's on now.
So this creature did not look like any known creature. And it looked somewhat monstrous, hence the name Montauk Monster. And if you just looked at the picture that Ethan put up on the screen, you will probably think that it doesn't look like any animal, really. It looks like it could be a number of animals, but combined. So if you don't remember what happened in that episode, basically a woman was walking along the beach with some of her friends, and they were looking for a spot to sit on the beach. She saw a crowd that was gathered around something on the ground, and when the group went over to see what all the commotion was about, she saw this strange, scary-looking creature. So she takes out her phone and she snaps a picture of the creature, and this picture begins circulating and getting a ton of attention, as well as raising a lot of questions as to what exactly this animal is. So this creature still has never been identified definitively. So some people speculated that it could have been something completely natural, like a bloated raccoon or a dog or a sea turtle with its shell taken off, while others say it was an alien. If you look at the animal, it's very clear that it's not a normal or natural animal that you would just see roaming around in nature. Mm-hmm. And if it is just some regular animal, it has to have something going on with it that makes it kind of diseased. So the government responded after all of the uproar surrounding the incident by saying that the creature was a raccoon, and that it looked so strange because it had a combination of skin diseases. Now, if you look at it, you don't see raccoon. Nope. And I'm going to be honest, I have some experience getting up close and personal with raccoons. I actually, when I was a child, had 5 pet raccoons that lived in my backyard. I don't know if I've shared that on the podcast before, but yes, I had 5 pet raccoons that lived in my backyard when I was a kid, and I don't mean to name them. I can name them. Their names are Buster, Gus, Bandit, Apollo, and Artemis. And Apollo and Artemis were twins. They're babies. So we would feed these raccoons. They lived in our backyard. They would come up to our sliding glass door and put their little paws on the door. That looks nothing like a raccoon.
I would encourage you to go ahead and Google image search Montauk Monster. There's some very interesting photos. This one
is that's
Obama?
On the screen
right now shows Obama fist bumping the Montauk Monster. And there is a rendering here.
Wasn't it 2008 when Obama became president?
Yeah. There is a rendering here.
See a connection?
The monster as a raccoon. I'm assuming that this is if the water obviously made some issues, but
so why don't you pull up a picture of a raccoon?
That is a picture of a
raccoon. No, an actual raccoon in nature. Okay, so a lot of people make fun of me when I say that raccoons are very, very cute, but I just want you to compare the picture of the Montauk Monster that we showed with a picture of a raccoon, and let me know if you think that it's a raccoon.
It does not look like a raccoon.
Don't think so.
The facial structure seems very different.
And the hands. Raccoons have hands. They have thumbs.
Even if it has diseases...
This animal looks like it has hooves.
And even if it...
doesn't look like it has hooves.
Yeah.
And it has almost looking like a beak.
I think you could say that, because it was in the water, water damage maybe affected it, but it shouldn't have, changed the structure that much.
Right. I mean, to me, it looks almost like it has hooves.
Yeah.
A beak.
I don't think it looks like a raccoon.
No. So the thing is, nobody knows where the body is now. Mm-hmm. So nobody knows who took it, or where they took it, but it was removed from the beach. So some eyewitnesses claim that they saw men in black hazmat suits come and take the body away.
Black hazmat suits.
Black hazmat suits. But this has never been confirmed. And so the main question here is, a lot of people suspected, they didn't know where it came from, it washed up on the beach. But a lot of people suspected that because of the proximity, it was coming from the Plum Island Research Facility.
Right.
And it also raised the question of whether or not there's animal testing that is going beyond the scope of what the government officially says it is. And whether the Montauk monster was the result of some secret government experimentation. Because when we think of diseases like foot and mouth disease or African swine fever, those diseases affect livestock. If it's a raccoon, raccoons are not livestock.
Right.
Like, that's not something that is a big staple in the American diet. And so therefore, unless they're testing how it can transmit to other animals, or unless there's even more disease, like testing going on, a lot of people question whether it was some kind of a hybrid creature that was created.
Maybe it was originally a raccoon.
The question is like whether it was a hybrid creature that was created, whether there's experimentation going on with creating these mutant creatures as opposed to just investigating diseases, but the question of, can we create new species? So that is one of the big things that kind of has put the Plum Island Research Facility on the map. By 2012, 4 other hybrid-looking creatures had washed up on the shores of Long Island and Connecticut.
Wow.
And in 2010, we had another thing that washed up on the beach. And this one is one of the most chilling things. So in January of 2010, a 6-foot-tall African-American man washes up on the shore of Plum Island itself. And apparently...
So not a thing, a person.
So the body was apparently discovered by the security guards at Plum Island. So this man was...
it washed up on Plum Island.
He was on the beach of Plum Island. So he was described as being not quite human in appearance. And he had abnormally long fingers. So the man also had 5 holes that had been drilled into his head, which were likely indicative of invasive brain surgery or experimentation. So this case is still unsolved. Nobody knows the identity of the person who washed up on the beach, and there has been no explanation offered by the facility about what or why happened. So this leads people to question whether he had come from Plum Island and was a victim of human experimentation that might be happening there. And to create, like I said, either mutant beings, human-animal hybrids, to create maybe a super species. And there was just nothing that ever came of this. So we have animals that are strange animals washing up on the beaches. We have a human who has evidence of being experimented on washing up on the place itself. And another question that Ethan, you brought up was, is this facility the home of biowarfare weapons and experiments on biological warfare? So apparently during the Cold War, the facility was used to create and engineer pathogens to be used as bioweapons that could be used against Russia in the event of the Cold War becoming a true war. So this happened in the mysterious Building 257 at the facility. So apparently these endeavors were stopped by President Nixon in 1969, but people question whether this aspect of the facility was actually stopped. Also, this is just a point that I had, even if the experiments were stopped, what happened to all of the samples and pathogens that were created? So it doesn't necessarily matter if the research is still ongoing, but the question is, do we still have these pathogens as a threat? Could they be leaked? Could they be, either leaked accidentally or released on purpose, or were they destroyed? So the thing is, the government denied that this had happened for a long time, even though Cuban officials said that their crops had been damaged by bioweapons created by the U.S. government. And the government has come out and said that they can't comment on the list of pathogens that are being researched at the facility because it's sensitive information.
But I thought all the research was public.
All their research is public. Anyone can go online and look at any of it. It's all published, but we can't comment on the pathogens because it's sensitive.
Interesting.
Okay. So in 2007, it came to light that 113 research facilities in the U.S. with bioweapon capabilities refused to disclose their operations to the public.
That's not sketchy at all.
Right. So as you said, Ethan, this is a violation of the Geneva Convention, which was ratified shortly after Nixon apparently stopped the research into biological weaponry. And not only that, but it's also against the law. It violates not only the Geneva Convention, but also the Biological Weapons Convention, which made biological warfare illegal. However, amnesty was granted to these centers by President George W. Bush.
Oh, well then that's fine then.
Yeah. So there's Bush again. There he is. The Bush, what's it called? The Texas Taliban.
Oh.
The Bush Buddies.
Bush Buddies.
The Bush Buddies. So this, of course, leads to the speculation that these facilities are being funded and helped by the government. And that even though they say everything's above board, all our research is published, everything, you can email the scientists if you want to. Well, maybe they're funding biological warfare experiments. Another really interesting topic that is brought up a lot in connection to Plum Island is Lyme disease. So some people suspect that Lyme disease was either accidentally leaked from the facility or that it was purposely released onto the population in the area and that it was created in the Plum Island facility. So this is a theory that was first discussed in a 2004 book titled Lab 257, The Disturbing Secret of the Government's Plum Island Germ Laboratory. So the author of the book suggests that not only was Lyme disease released into the public by the Plum Island facility, but also the Dutch duck plague in 1967 and West Nile virus in 1999. So, in 1975, members of the town of Lyme, Connecticut, begin to experience an outbreak of symptoms such as fever, fainting, delusions, psychosis, and paralysis.
Is that where the name Lyme comes from?
Yes.
I always wondered.
Yeah, Lyme, Connecticut. So this was the first infection of its kind, and the disease was named after the town that became ground zero for the disease. At first, doctors misdiagnosed the disease as juvenile rheumatoid arthritis, as they hadn't ever seen diseases like this present in the past. So Lyme, Connecticut is only about 9 miles from Plum Island.
Interesting.
Okay, Ethan, do you know how Lyme disease spreads?
I don't even know what Lyme disease is.
So Lyme disease, let me do a little bit of research because it's a very complex disease.
This is another one of these diseases that I thought was, I thought it was Lyme as in, the fruit.
Right. So basically Lyme disease, you've probably heard about it in the media. I know Justin Bieber has Lyme disease. Bella and Anwar Hadid have Lyme disease. But basically I'm going to read the CDC website for Lyme disease. It's the most common vector-borne disease in the United States. It is caused by a bacterium, Borrelia burgdorferi, and rarely Borrelia mayeni. It is I'm not going to tell you. So typical symptoms include fever, headache, fatigue, and a characteristic skin rash called erythema migrans. So this rash basically looks like a bullet, like a bullseye.
So it's a rash?
So it starts as a rash.
Starts as a rash.
It's characteristic that this person will have think of like a bullseye. That's what the rash looks like. But they also get symptoms like fever, headache, chronic fatigue.
And this is like you get it and then it doesn't go away?
So if it's left untreated, it can spread to joints, the heart, and the nervous system. And so most cases of Lyme disease can be treated with antibiotics, but I'll get into it a little bit more, but because it is so hard to diagnose, a lot of people will have these symptoms for a really long time. And so, I remember it was a big thing on, I think it was Real Housewives of Beverly Hills when Yolanda was on. So Yolanda Hadid is Bella Anwar and Gigi Hadid's mom. So I think she had Lyme disease, and she was chronically ill for a very long time before it took a lot of tests and specialists to figure out what she had. So do you know how Lyme disease spreads?
I don't know.
So, Lyme disease spreads through ticks.
Oh.
If an infected tick bites someone, then it will transmit the disease.
I found a tick on my head when I was in 5th grade. Or no, when I was in kindergarten.
Ticks, those are one thing
Ticks scare me.
I like actually am very scared of them.
The doctor like got it off me and then showed it to me.
I don't want to, you're like, I don't want to know.
I don't know why I did, but it scares me.
That's one of the reasons I don't want to go camping.
I think they like tested it and they don't think it was infected, so I don't think so I'm good.
We'll get into that, but yeah, that's one of the reasons I don't want to go camping, because people are like, you got to make sure you get the tick spray. I'm like,
well, ticks
I
can
don't
be
want
anywhere,
ticks burrowing
not just
into
camping.
me in the woods.
Yeah, but ticks can be anywhere.
I don't go in the woods. Anyways, so
There's trees
do you
outside.
remember one of the things that Eric Traub was known for researching?
I forgot.
Spreading disease through tick bites as a method of biological warfare. So experimentation on ticks was something that happened at Plum Island, regardless of whether Traub was the one experimenting on the ticks or someone else. The 1970s were the height of tick-borne infection research, apparently. And Lyme disease is very hard to diagnose, as it mimics a lot of other more common diseases. So the prevalence of Lyme disease is growing significantly, specifically on the East Coast. 95% of cases...
Like right now?
Yes. 95% of cases of Lyme disease occur in only 14 states. 14 states that are near to Plum Island. I watched a really great video on this, and it's going to be in the show notes, of course, but she showed the CDC map, and it had the dots with, like, the incidence of Lyme disease. It was primarily right in the spot that is within reach of Plum Island.
Interesting.
And it was barely on the West Coast. So I think we're good.
Interesting.
It's also very difficult to even obtain a test for the disease, or to receive treatment in most cases, which most people find to be suspicious and further indication of a government cover-up. I read on this video, this woman shared the story of I think it was her mother who had Lyme disease, and she said that she had to basically beg a doctor to give her a test for the disease, and that insurance a lot of times would not cover the testing. And that she went to one doctor and they like laughed in her face. And she looked at the medical record after and said, patient is convinced that she has Lyme disease.
And she did?
And she had it, yes.
Well, you know, good reason to be convinced you have it if you do have it.
So typically, as the CDC said, Lyme disease is treated with a 1-month round of antibiotics. And if the person is still experiencing symptoms after treatment, they're oftentimes diagnosed with something else. And therefore, if they die, they don't die from Lyme disease.
So,
or if they have these persisting symptoms of chronic fatigue, or, you know, muscle problems or nerve problems, it's something else. It's not Lyme disease. So even though we have a relatively high number of cases, it's probably even higher with how hard it is to diagnose. And there is also the question of whether the release of Lyme disease into the population was an experiment to see how the bioweapon would behave in the public. So we know that the government has experimented in bioweaponry on its own population, as well as on members of the military. That's not something that's a question, it's just a fact. It's happened. So we think about things like the Tuskegee syphilis study. We think about, like, there's other instances where the military specifically has been subjected to these things, and it's just a fact. So the scientists at the facility state that a disease such as Lyme disease escaping from the facility to the mainland is impossible, as all of the animals used for research there are killed. However, we do know that in the 70s, a lot of the animals were kept in outside pens. We also do know that the island is a wildlife habitat, with many birds migrating there throughout the year.
And also, ticks are like sneaky little buggers.
Right. So we have a lot of birds migrating there throughout the year. It is possible that an infected tick could have been picked up by a bird and then transmitted to the mainland. It's also possible that an infected tick got onto someone because they burrow. Maybe they didn't wash it off in the shower. It got outside, they go back home, and boom. So it could be completely accidental, or it could have been purposeful. So many critics of this theory state that Lyme disease probably existed long before these first reported diagnoses in the 1970s, and that it simply hadn't been identified before, or that had been misdiagnosed.
I mean, yeah, I can see that because of like how common a lot of those symptoms are.
Mm-hmm.
It could be diagnosed as something else. I can understand that.
Yeah. So that's the Lyme disease question. And of course, we're going to kind of get to our thoughts at the end, but I just wanted you to have that in the back of your head. Another question a lot of people have is whether or not it houses alien technology. Didn't find a lot of that on my research, but
Of course not.
I think that's a question that comes up with these secretive facilities.
Well, yeah, because if you don't know what's in there, it has to be alien, right?
Right. So the Plum Island Research Facility actually began the process of closing and being moved by the government from the island off the coast of New York to Manhattan, Kansas in 2005.
They just really like Manhattan. They wanted to be nearby it,
Yeah.
but not the New York one.
Yeah. So the government says that this move is purely for financial reasons. And the Plum Island facility...
They're in Kansas.
Right.
Way cheaper.
The Plum Island facility should be closed by around 2023 and replaced by this new place in Kansas called the National Bio and Agro Defense Facility. So the center is going to have security that is heightened from Plum Island, which will give it the security clearance required to research larger scale diseases, such as animal diseases that can be transmitted to humans. So it's interesting that a facility that states one of their main purposes is to protect livestock from highly contagious and dangerous diseases is moving to the Midwest, which is often called the breadbasket of America, which is a place that houses a lot of farms and livestock.
Yeah, that's true.
So they're like, okay, well, here's the thing. It's purely financial, but we have such good technology now that it doesn't even matter that we're moving to Kansas and we're infecting these diseases or researching these diseases that could be completely catastrophic if they got out.
Right, well, their security is an 11, so.
It's an 11 out of 10. And now it's going to be even higher, so now we can research even more dangerous diseases.
So their security is going to be like a 12?
It should be a 12. Should be a 12. So not only is it in the breadbasket, but it's also in the middle of Tornado Alley. So they better be a 13 if they want to make sure that they're not going to get, like...
Well, how do you secure yourself against a tornado?
I have no experience.
Build underground.
Okay, well, that just makes it even sketchier sounding. They're building... I know that it's like tornado prevention, but it's kind of sketchy. So apparently, the island and the facility are currently for sale.
We should buy it. How much is it?
I'm not buying it.
How much is it?
Well, it's in New York. So New
Well,
York, we know New York real estate's expensive.
And it's outside of New York.
I don't know how much it is, Ethan.
Let's see if it's on Zillow.
So environmental groups are not happy about this, as the island has been a habitat for a number of birds as well as seals that migrate there every year. So it freaks me out that the facility is being moved and changing its name.
What's it changing its name to?
It is changing its name to the National Bio and Agro Defense Facility.
That sounds even more dangerous.
It sounds scary. Well, yeah, because they're researching to the place. They're researching diseases that are more deadly and catastrophic. So, the thing is, they said the same thing at multiple times in the past, that there was like super good security before there were leaks of diseases and they had to update protocol.
I found a 0.28 acre lot
on the island?
Plum Island Boulevard. It's only $2 million.
2.1 mil.
And is there anybody that wants to pitch in? $2 million? Plus 100,000?
We could give the
We'll
$1.
cover the $1.
The $1. It's 2,100,000
$2,101,000
and $1.
We will pitch in
We'll
$1
contribute
if some other people want to pitch in $2,100,000. I don't even know if this is actually on Plum Island.
I don't know. We're gonna kind of start to wind down to our final thoughts. But I noticed that when I was doing my research, it was really hard to find general information on the theories that wasn't slanted against the validity of the theories. So most of the sources that I found that actually talked about different theories
We're, like,
about what
anti.
yeah. And a lot of the ones that actually talked about the theories were from smaller channels. So, of course, I'm going to be linking those in the show notes. And
Well, we're also a smaller channel.
we're smaller than the small channels.
We're a minuscule channel.
Yes. So, a lot of the websites or sources I found were basically saying, here's this crazy theory. Of course, nothing is going on there because the government has been so open about the whole thing, and you can find the researchers' contact information on the website, so you can contact them and ask them questions. I actually saw a source that said the government has been super open about everything, and if you want, you can email the scientists who work there, and I'm sure they just want to nerd out about research.
I feel like just because you can email researchers and ask them questions doesn't mean they're telling the truth.
Right. So I have two responses to that. One, it's foolish. I mean, I'm just going to be blunt. It's foolish to take everything that government officials say at face value. And that's especially in regards to things that may make them look bad or may cause, like, panic or public outcry. So if just because a government official or the guy who's getting paid by the research facility says, oh, we're super open, everything's published, it's honestly foolish to believe that they're telling the truth. Because he's not going to go out there and be like, yeah, so we're actually pretty sketchy. Like, they're paying me, and I'm on the government's payroll, but I'm actually pretty sketchy.
Can confirm, we are lying to you. Just let you know right now.
Yeah.
We're making bioweapons. We're breaking the law. Not telling you what we're doing. It's fine.
Yeah. So
thanks for asking.
So that's point one. It's foolish to just believe what the government says at face value. Also, the government denied anything regarding biological weaponry was happening at the facility for decades. So they denied it in the past. They said that it's not happening. That, of course, that's not happening. We're not, like, experimenting on biological weaponry. And it turned out to be false. It turned out that they were. And we also know that researchers funded by the government purposefully infected people with diseases for the purpose of research in the past. So as I referenced the Tuskegee syphilis study, people were purposefully infected with syphilis to see how it reacted in their bodies. So it's not so far-fetched to say that perhaps it may have happened again. Specifically with, like, the Lyme disease example. And it would be foolish to think that the government stopped experimentation just because they signed the Geneva Convention, so of course they stopped. Well, there's a list of 113 research facilities in this country alone that refused to publish what they were studying. And they were pardoned by George W. Bush. So we can't even... What about the ones who are not on U.S. soil? What about those ones? So it'd be foolish to think that, one, it stopped just because they said it did, and two, that there's no possibility that it could ever get out. So, Ethan, as we conclude, what do you think is or was going on at Plum Island?
Oh, nothing.
Nothing? Okay.
No, just kidding.
He's like, I actually emailed all the researchers.
It would be funny because you said, like, it would be foolish, and so I was like, oh, let's just say the foolish thing. No, anyway, it does seem as though there are some sketchy things going on. Whether or not they're doing any sort of illegal experimentation.
Is it technically illegal if the government's sanctioning it?
Yeah, I think there are, because there's international laws and stuff like that. Human rights violations and things. Like, the government has to follow the law still, even though they make the law. I don't think they don't always act like that, but they do.
Yeah.
So I don't know if I think anything of that sort of nefariousness is going on. The bio weapon thing, potentially. I don't know. Whenever it comes to the government, I feel like I always kind of am like, maybe. But also...
Like, maybe there's more to the story.
Yeah. But also, it's like, it's so hard to tell because the government's pretty good at covering its tracks. So, you would think that if there was some more sketchy things going on, more stuff would get out. You know, there's usually lots of whistleblowers and stuff with this kind of thing. So you'd think that there would be more, like, former employees or stuff, like, saying, oh, yeah, this is what we did. If it were true. Because I feel like that's the case with a lot of the other kind of stuff we talked about. So, maybe not. but don't trust the government 100%. So I'm sitting on the fence.
You're sitting on the fence, but you're definitely on. Well, it wouldn't be surprising if there was like a cover up going on.
I would never be surprised if the government lied to us.
I definitely think there's sketchy stuff going on there. 100%. I think that. I don't think that they stopped doing bioweapon or biowarfare experimentation. I think that there's probably a lot of countries right now who are still doing that. And so I think that just logically, if you think about it, it would be foolish if you're thinking like, oh,
it would be foolish.
I'm going to, like, if you're the leader of the American government or whatever, if you know that other countries are doing it, even though it's technically illegal, you probably are thinking, yeah, I'd be stupid if I didn't get my, like, hat in the ring as well. So I think that 100% there still is, or there was. We know that they're doing research on even more dangerous diseases in the future when they move to Kansas. So I think that there's for sure stuff that they have created and that they are maybe even still in the process of creating. I wouldn't be surprised if they were experimenting on animals and creating these hybrids, or experimenting on human beings. Like that man who was found on the beach with like long fingers and holes drilled into his head. I wouldn't be surprised if maybe there are people who are, who were being researched in these facilities. I mean, you think of like, who were the people that that were chosen to be used as like test subjects in past experiments was African American people. So, I mean, African American man washes up with evidence of experimentation on him. I mean, I don't know.
If the shoe fits.
I actually think that the argument for Lyme disease being released from the island is very compelling. I don't know enough about it to know whether or not what the prevalence was prior, but I do think it's interesting that primarily the cases started occurring while the facility was, experimenting on tick-borne infections, and that the majority of cases are happening in places that are near the facility. So in other words, I think it's definitely concerning that this facility is moving to Kansas. I think that's like very concerning when you think of like what they officially research and possibly what they unofficially research. And knowing how close they'll be to like a huge portion of like livestock and like our like population of food. And it also, I always also get sketched out when like facilities like that change their names, even though like it makes sense because it's not going to be on Plum Island anymore, but it still sketches me out because it's just like almost like you're wiping the slate clean.
So why is it called Plum Island?
I don't know why it's called Plum Island, but it's when they change the name, to me it almost like is meant to erase and distance themselves from all the sketchy stuff that has been alleged in the past. Yeah. And so that kind of gives me some so that's my thoughts. I was like researching this and I was like very like, the government is hiding things from us the whole time I was researching it. So we want to know what you guys think about this. What do you guys think is going on at Plum Island or was going on? And what do you think will be going on when it's moved to Kansas next year? Do you think there's anything sinister? What do you think about like specifically Lyme disease? Let us know in the comments what you think. We'd love to hear what you guys think. And let us know if you have another topic you want us to talk about, because we're always open to that. Make sure you leave us a nice 5-star review on your streaming platform of choice, and share us with a friend or family, and we will be back next week. Bye.
Bye.